Been a second since I've gone this far back, and the first time we've done so. So what say ye, we take a minute to go back in time to 2009, yes, it was that long ago, to Borderlands. The first one. Except also the Enhanced Edition, for reasons we'll get into. For a visit back, I thought it'd be fitting to take things slow. Take them easy. So inspired by a one-shot run that fell victim to linear scaling, and an incredible run in the sequel by my buddy Mick, link in the description by the way, what better way to return to Borderlands than by going the lowest effort route possible and killing every enemy that gets in our way with the fewest attacks we could throw. Right off the bat, while you may see us getting off a bus and talking to Claptrap, the true protagonist of the franchise, I see a failed attempt. Why is that? Well, simple. With the Enhanced Edition, the devs added 6 legendary guns and saw fit to start you with 2 of them at random. By restarting repeatedly, you can curate the start of your run. I'm fairly sure you can't get duplicates, so getting one wasn't that bad, but trying to get both hurts your chances pretty dramatically. With really long unskippable sections and the worst memory leak I've ever seen in a major release, things were taking a while, because taking it easy is hard. Funny story, while testing some things out for the run, I did actually get the things that I was after on the first try, before knowing that they'd be what I wanted, and on the wrong character. This time, it was put to a vote live on Twitch, and by the power of democracy, I ended up moving on without one of the 2 guns. It was more of a want than a need. So, which did we keep? The Sucker Punch. Rapid-fire little gun that does pretty mediocre damage. Why do we want it then? Well, as the name would suggest, it's pretty melee-oriented. It gives a 500% damage boost to swings. But of course then, what is a swing? What is a shot? Why are the mysteries of life always so wrapped in a complicated web of technicalities? Well, for the purpose of this run, we'll be doing what it says on the tin. We'll be attacking once per foe at the most. The gun that I'm using allows melee attacks to fulfill that quota quickly and easily. But, it being a full auto gun, each individual shot does very little. As such, killing enemies with it is off the table. Holding the trigger would simply be cheating. But if I can shoot it once and the thing is no longer alive, job's a good'un. Burst fire? Very nice. There is indeed a first time for everything. I'm looking at you, doll. So where should my mission take me but to the town of Firestone? The first section of the game is a lot of the same. Go kill some things, go back, go pick some things up, go back. While the general game cycle never really gets more complicated, the enemies will of course get progressively more health. Melee would fuel our efforts for a bit and knock out a surprising number of quests that can and do boil down to just smacking some things. On my way to deal with a heavier health target, I ran into an issue, specifically of the shield variety. Only a few short levels between being able to kill things and not. So I did what anyone would do and got a job working some endgame quests in the post-game DLC. Who said a lack of effort was going to be easy? The General Knox DLC realistically has very few mandatory kills, but there are many a thing that don't extend you the same courtesy of non-violence, so while the level difference may be massive, I do have a car. Will this work? Hard no. So with not nearly enough health to survive combat, and not nearly enough experience to solve that, I instead focused on getting my paycheck in the form of relatively high-level gear, which I could flip at vendors nearby. Immediately after saving a ton, we went back to Firestone to buy and sell a lot of healing items. Why? Simple. This game features challenges that you can complete for experience, one being called Merchant of Death. If you're familiar with the game, then you may know where this is going. By selling 1,199, I've set myself up to sell just one more and earn 20,000 experience. By buying it back, it resets the challenge for reasons that could have been patched out over a decade ago, but weren't. And I can wait around for a really slow autosave to then let me reset the area and do it again. While of course fighting the memory leak that gets worse every time you load a map, requiring a full restart of the game. I had to often throughout the run. So if you see the frames dipping or just stopping at any point, it's because the enhanced version is horrible. It took a really long time to get the XP I'd need, but it was better than farming manually, and I mean, professionals have standards. Just editing the game to get XP would feel terrible. Some would instead draw that line at using exploits, but hey. With a lot of levels in hand, I made my way back into the DLC in search of progress. If you're looking at my level and thinking I've made the challenge easy, then rest assured, I haven't. I've made it this thing called possible. Or that would be the case if I kept going. Definitely didn't accidentally break the farm. Nothing of the sort. Oops. Case in point though, I really need to make some progress in this DLC, and even ignoring the fact that I can't do any meaningful damage to the enemies around me, I also can't survive them nearly long enough to stop being lost, and also get to my destination. Which is tragic, because with the linear scaling for things like damage and health, additional levels are going to basically add nothing to my chances to get through. The worst part is that even when I was more successful, I got in my own way. Gravity is the worst. For reference, here's the best that I could do with a melee crit. As you can see, it's not enough. Around 900 damage with a 500% buff. Max level does about 510 damage to targets of this level with body shots. I specify the level difference because this game features disparities in damage between opponents. At 6 levels lower, you deal about 5% of your usual damage. At 6 levels above, you deal double. Levels exceeding those don't really matter, and there's a lot of variance between, but we're mostly going to be dealing in extremes here. Additionally, every time you leave the game via closing it or save quitting, you have to go back through the really long driving section and whatnot just to get back to try the little outpost section, because fast travels are weirdly rare in this game. Luckily, while the DLC was giving me a ludicrous amount of trouble, the base game had opened up to me quite a bit. So I swung by to rename Nine Toes to 5 Fingers in a quick lop. Hope we'll be able to handle it, but I've got the feeling he's gonna need to get used to the different digits. In a boneheaded move, some dude ended up on my hit list taking a thing I'd need to get access to a car in the base game. Not sure what their deal was, but if they thought for a moment that they could fracture my plans, then they really hadn't thought it through. I take being lazy very seriously, and nothing is gonna stop me if I can help it. Now, while burst fire in general is admittedly a gray area, cars were weirdly often a point of issue. Should this still count? Maybe? But it didn't feel quite right, so we often had to reset the area when driving places. And while sure, a couple of bosses fell before the might of a single smack, the gravy train was coming to a stop. Things like basic mobs weren't a problem, and I was okay with that. As for boss encounters though, nada! Not quite settled. Those ain't numbers made to inspire. But now, hear me out on this. How many button pushes does it take to throw out a turret? I say 1. And due to the level disparity, despite placing it in the wrong spot, the boss went down without any fuss. With him dead, we had the tools we needed. We were finally able to face one of the most important questions of the run. Either? Or? After much deliberation, weighing the pros and cons of this question of all questions, there was no choice but to put it to a vote. And if you want to have a say in such world-altering decisions, such power and democracy, you can sometimes maybe do so live on Twitch via a link in the description. There, chat, I said the thing. Now we're taking either, as has been selected, and removing Sledge's life privileges so I can get a nice little piece of kit. Sledge's shotgun is a beautiful thing to pick up. Like, sure, the ancient Iridian relic is nice, but you know what this gun can do? Simply put, it's a burst fire shotgun that does really respectable damage, but why say with words what can be conveyed via bullets? I press button once, enemies die fast and hard. What's not to love about this monster of a gun? It's got knockback, it's got power, it's got a problem. While the damage is great, one shot is often not enough. Missing just a tad is awful, and pushing things out of the way makes it worse. Super worth it, but this gun ain't without its weaknesses. Now, turret aside, you may be wondering, why Roland? Per shot, his damage kinda sucks, and well, simple. I ain't looking for the highest damage in a single bullet, nor pellet. By using Roland, I can get a slightly higher magazine, among other things, allowing even greater bursts to enemies like cars, and sometimes that works. Best practice is really wait for cars to stop moving as much as possible to maybe sorta get the shots that I needed in. It'd sometimes take a bit, but the drivers in this game are mostly reliably bad. Which is really important because right after is a really difficult point for a lot of runs. Mad Mel is a car fight that first requires you fight more cars. I had to clear out both enemy cars and enemy mobs slowly and painfully, repeatedly. Everything respawns when you have to reset, and Mel won't come out until the initial cars are gone. Interestingly, ramming enemy cars doesn't seem to damage them, but you can use your car to force them to stop for a bit. Maybe even overturn them. If that doesn't feel right, you can also just wait and they'll do it themselves if you leave yours unattended in the arena. Well, you can see why we had to repeat this many times. This damned thing is tanky. So how would we handle such a thing? Well, I started by going back to the DLC to find an Easter egg enemy that you can spawn in at a crazy high level. Figured maybe I could kill it, and how, you may ask, pray tell, doing 5% damage when I kill something so much stronger for experience. I could barely even get him to move after me in a productive fashion. After all, his AI often has him just standing still entirely, refuses to move. Well, with some luck, I can get him to a ledge. From there, I have more than enough knockback to send him flying into a death barrier. Any second now. Okay, when, or maybe more importantly, where is the death barrier? I figured I'd try a bit longer before trying unsuccessfully to continue the DLC. From there, I figured we'd take a detour and kill Scar a few times. A skag that can drop artifacts to elementally enhance our action skill. Why? You'll see. We were farming here for a while, and then returned to Mel, and the long and short of it is that they're the exception to the rule. Where other drivers crash, Mel just keeps trucking. Getting it to stop is akin to... well, you're not getting it to stop consistently. And I could just wait a really long time, but I also hope I don't have to explain why that's a bad strategy that just feels bad. So I left to try again, also unsuccessfully, so I of course had to go back and try knocking the high-level foe to a different side of the void. It went exactly as well as you'd think, but I was both so close to greatness, and so far from it. I'm not grasping at straws, you're grasping at straws. The first Borderlands features health kits that you can use to heal at least a little bit of health, which I would use to brute force my way through. They heal over time and can't be stacked, but they would prove to be enough to make my way through the roadblock, and finally, we were able to advance the DLC. Progress is progress is progress. It's a good thing we just had to do it multiple more times and wasted healing kits in the process. The trip back and resetting the full game is just so delightful. But with patience, determination, realistically being just mostly stubborn, I was able to check another one off. You can think of those sections full of high-level enemies as the tutorial for what came next, because next were really long and incredibly dangerous sections where I had no real means to fight back. I had some of the smoothest movements of my life passing through this place. Were this how I performed on the daily, I'd be doing great. In what? Answer: yes. I made the best use of cover available I could, forcing myself up against walls and hoping the flying enemies wouldn't follow me around it. Armies behind me, huge enemies in front of me, I was clinging to anything and everything I could get. I survived through an absolute nightmare of a run of on-level endgame enemies, very much in spite of myself. And it felt great. After, I'd just have to take another roadblock like I'd already done. One of the major differences, of course, would be that the respawn point has you targeted by an armada of flying enemies that are unfortunately good at getting around cover. In addition, of course, to all of the other enemies present. In a word, this was going horribly. I had very little healing, and I can only get more at med vendors that are back through the hellscape that I ran through. So that was off the table. With the cars doing so much damage, though, I figured I could use one to clear things out a touch. Make my life easier. How wrong I was, and just like that, I had to reset, meaning I'd have to go back through the last section again. I was distraught. Enough to try taking some gear that I farmed back to try blowing up a car again. Were it in the correct element, this probably would have worked too. Wouldn't realistically help me much, but there was a lot of gear farming. Like a lot of it. Too much, even. Worst part being that realistically, had I just been spec'd for and thrown a turret, might have actually worked. This was the only time I ever saw the thing sit still. Fact of the matter is, I was slipping. I was confident I could do it, but not confident in how. Not steady in my step or aim. Resets came fast and often. When doing the bare minimum, sometimes you have to do a lot, and that's just how it is. I am ambitiously lazy, and no amount of deaths was going to deter me from what I knew to be possible. Through luck, through skill, through whatever you'd like to call it, I would force my way through because I must. Because I can. I carefully drove around activating pumps for a side quest for a few reasons. Experience is nice, but one larger thing would come with it. Right after, I could kill this thing. Yeah, the damage here is uninspired, to put it nicely. We tried a few different elements to no success, so we went over to the DLC to try farming better elemental artifacts via turrets and really easy to kill wereskags. But even then, we were looking to be screwed simply for having not enough experience. Not a high enough level. What is a Vault Hunter to do in such a circumstance? Well, we put it to a vote. There just isn't a great source of experience that wouldn't leave us farming for ages, and it was technically accessible. I could just restart, which would suck, but the Willow Tree save editor could be used to undo me breaking the farms, so I could semi-legitimately farm my way to a higher level. Through a unanimous vote, that's what we do. If you don't like it, you'll have to show up next time to cast your vote. Or, I thought it could be. Turns out you can't edit challenges that way, so instead, the short story long, I have some incredibly smart and talented people who watch me play games for some reason. And while there are theoretical workarounds, most of them would have me reproving things that I already did, so in a weird twist, I had multiple people helping me. A huge thank you to HackerBitch1 and HackerBitch2. I swear I'm not the person choosing these names, both for figuring out that the save files could be modified through hex editing and learning how to hex edit specifically to get me out of the situation that I put myself in. I still am not really clear on what it is or how it's done. To me, it's akin to witchcraft, and we stand witches here. Code witches? That sounds sick as hell. Why is that not a more common trope? Genuinely, though, thank you. And you're awesome. My brain tends to go blank when looking at things like this, so in so many words, I really couldn't have fixed this without you without spending an agonizing amount of time retreading things. With their help, I was able to go back to Motorhead after farming Merchant of Death for a little while longer. I just needed to be level 40-ish, where I could sometimes successfully kill him. Emphasis on sometimes. The drive here is long, and the kill rate was less than 50-50. But we could beat him occasionally, which was enough to get the linchpin of my plan. You may ask, why Roland of all characters? After all, Mordecai clearly has the higher single hit damage. But he can't kill Motorhead under the conditions I'd like. Maybe he could eventually, but where's the fun in skipping to level 69? Both Brick and Lilith get higher melee damage, but not while using their action skills due to the loss of damage bonus from Sucker Punch, meaning it's still Morty. But Morty still can't beat Motorhead. Nor can he beat things like the final boss without some glitches or possibly just some crazy overleveled guns. Even some of the ones I tested, though, he just falls behind. Roland, though, obviously can kill Motorhead. Also regenerates ammo. Why are those important? Well, meet the chopper. You may think it's full auto, but you'd be wrong. This is a burst fire gun. When you fire once, it doesn't stop until it's out, because the burst is effectively infinite and the magazine is massive. You may be familiar with its rendition in Borderlands 2. If you're not, there is a great video from Lil Gas Mask on the whole experience if you're interested. Would recommend. But fact is, I'm attacking once, and the gun is just going nuts after. You may see this as cheating. I see it as using my resources. This gun is the most technically correct answer to all that ails me. One of my biggest complaints about this game is the color palette. It was inspired by Mad Max and is just dull. It's all just various shades of brown, and I don't find that particularly visually stimulating. I say we paint it red. They had me running around activating generators instead of, like, anything else. I got to move on to Bandit Extermination, which was nice. I was using a level 30-something volcano that I found for some variety, but the blast radius on it proved a bit problematic along the way sometimes. I was able to regenerate ammo faster via throwing my turret into a wall where it couldn't attack, which is really nice. Means less downtime between fights. Crom did this thing called getting on my kill list, which statistically is really bad for your health. Also terrible news for his compatriots, because they all became a mix of speed bump and variety. And as much as there is to dislike, the guns in this game just feel good a lot of the time. The accuracy stats can be a bit strange to get used to, but you take the bad with the good. I can overlook a not necessarily well-received game mechanic to get otherwise solid-feeling weapons. I even tried using the environment to my advantage here with the sludges, only to find out that it hadn't quite given up on killing things just yet. When it came to Crom, though, I got to show him once and for all who had the better turret. Mine only needs the trigger pulled once. Easy. No joke, I was looking for my target here and I saw a bunch of mobs. Wasn't sure which little blip they were and completely failed to read the name directly in front of me. All y'all gotta go. Oh, one of those was the target. In my killing spree, I stopped to eat a rocket and feed some rounds. You may notice a pattern, but don't worry, chopping through these folks is just how Roland do. Next up would come the Rack Hive. For the record, this is how much damage a volcano does. Crits ain't doing it. Sledge ain't doing it either. Frankly, most things in the game ain't gonna do much, so I guess the run ends here. Until, of course, it continues immediately after via a gun that is frankly incredible. I've heard of bullet hoses, but this is ridiculous. Ridiculously awesome, of course. That health bar didn't stand a chance. It only took a disproportionate amount of farming and a specific combination of mechanics, levels, and game knowledge, but finally, lazy has been achieved. Do you know how many times I had to listen to Marcus and Claptrap tell me about new missions? I did make pretty common use of hitting things even less, which is to say not at all. Just ignoring enemies and rushing the objectives. It just never stops being the best plan in these games, does it? A huge boon to these events, of course, would be that my gun is a lot more accurate with a K than the alternative. I, unfortunately, am not. I don't track shots well, and I mean, I finally got to be lazy, and frankly, this run was just a nice pick-me-up after spending something like a month working on monkey business. While exploring the giant structure that the next boss sat in, I found gravity, which gave me an idea. Hold on, no, that was not the plan. Damn it! More or less against my will, I was running around the place just killing things with my shotgun. Like a loser. Until finally something that spawned in that could technically survive it. For glory! Also, fun fact, enemies that you launch into death barriers don't count for second wins here, which was highly disappointing. Similarly, the mini-boss-like enemies that he spawns in, couldn't launch them. Just had to handle things the easy way. See, this is why I don't try to get fancy with things. It goes unappreciated. It just ain't worth doing. I hope you like being hamburger instead. Similar note, not once, but multiple times I tried. It's not a short walk here, and I have to re-kill all the bandits every time. He just refused to go the fun way. I just want you to know, big guy, you earned this. Cool. Took all the fun out of launching him into space. I was harassed on a stairway to my destination, and there's genuinely something funny about turning a rifle into an almost AoE situation, and despite not being a sniper-based character, my legendary sniper never stopped being relevant with flesh-based targets. I was surprised to see just how many weapons I could still comfortably use in the endgame. Though, if you really wanted to, you could just pick up high-level gear from the Golden Chest and Firestone, so, you know, level to 69, then pick up whatever you wanted. Keeping in mind, you can get legendaries in it, including but not limited to the Silent Knight, which gives an 800% crit boost. And through bugs, you can transfer that between guns, or you could use the first one you can spawn in with conjunction with Moxie's Underdome to move them between characters, then use a bug to just add that crit damage to whatever gun you wanted a few times over. Or you could do the same thing with melee on Morty. You might be able to farm on-level stuff from, like, the Underdome, but I'll be honest, I just couldn't be bothered to check. I'm already somewhat over-leveled, 69 would just be excessive. But there was a hole in my plan. Specifically one in the game. The chopper, volcano, even my hands, none of them can deal any damage to Lieutenant Steele. I ran through Guardian after Guardian, tanking blows while cooking up any sort of plan. Anything that could carry me through. I didn't have a solution. Luckily, the Destroyer had my back. Or, I guess more accurately, hers. Thanks, buddy! I took a tactical down so I couldn't be moved, set my controller down, and clicked the mouse but once. I let go of all forms of control, and Roland kept shooting well into the cutscene, thus bringing an end. Definitely no, for real, there's no way it'll be back for sequels, and also an end to the game. In any case, with my experience, I hope you've enjoyed your time here. While we put a bookend onto what is likely to be the most relaxed experience I will ever have with this game, I'd like to thank my lovely channel members, as well as Twitch subscribers, for your support. Gotta say, in some ways the game is better than I remember. In others it's worse, but either way, it was a really fun little break, and I suppose the DACA it provides should play nicely into things just around the bend. Hopefully it'll be around sooner rather than later, but it was nice to get to take this little side venture. Regardless, you probably know how to use social media, and I hope that means I get to hear your thoughts now on any future outings. Until then, remember to stay safe, spread some kindness in the world, and I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.